Welcome back to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. This is season 2, episode number 1, with a super interesting guest, Richard Nilsson. I'm your host. If this is your first time listening in, thank you and welcome. I'm Josh Chin, and joining me today is Richard Nilsson. He was the operator and founder of Lifestyle Asia, a very well-established luxury media magazine, online publication that he started way back in the early days of the .com era. And he documented his journey from a really hard industry in media all the way to what he's building out today in the pet industry, which is equally as hard, if not even harder, when it combines hardware, software, e-commerce, and data. And enjoyed his wide-ranging conversation of how he's been able to scale and grow his business with practically zero cost of acquisition, zero customer cost of acquisition. Enjoy. And we're live. All right. Today we have a really cool episode. Joining me, Richard Nilsson. He is the CEO and founder of MyPetGo. He's also a venture capitalist, and prior to that, a media entrepreneur. So a wide-ranging, I'd say, experiences, stories, and expertise, and all throughout very difficult things and very difficult career paths that Richard has taken. Now, MyPetGo, for those of you who don't know, is sort of like the Whoop for dogs. So I wear a Whoop. I've been a Whoop user for about 3-4 years now. So is Richard, and it's always something that's on my mind personally as a pet owner, as a dog and cat owner, that it would be so cool to have this on my dog. I've actually tried it out on my dog and it doesn't work. So thank you for joining me, Richard. Let's start with, how do you end up in a career path like this, going from media to hardware and software?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Look, I think it wasn't very planned this way. It's sort of, as life happens, this happened. And I guess, I was always in a way destined for entrepreneurship and venture, in that I didn't like the 9-to-5 kind of rhythm. I weren't very excited about dragging my feet to the office, the corporate office, I should say. I'm certainly very excited going to the entrepreneurial office, and I guess I guess maybe to a degree, I was a bit of a misfit in the corporate world, and I say maybe because I've been in the corporate world, and no one ever told me I was a misfit, but maybe I felt as a misfit, and certainly I have no issues with authority and working under somebody else. It's not that. It's just that I think it doesn't allow me to do what I was destined to do. In that way, I couldn't be as creative. I couldn't be, as much of a lateral thinker and kind of combat issues in the way that I wanted to do it. And ultimately, when you work for someone else, it tends to be for the money, first and foremost, and less so the mission and vision of wherever you are. I know that's not true for everybody, but I think I worked in banking, and it was nothing that excited me about being in banking, apart from the cash that I ended up getting in end of the month. And a high portion of that was also based on the performance, and so very sort of hardcore sales at an early age, selling insurance products and various sort of other banking instruments, loans, etc., etc. And so sales is a great foundation, but I guess and in entrepreneurship, you have to be able to sell everything from yourself to your services or products. But I sort of accidentally ended up in Hong Kong at the age of about 20, and that kind of brought me into the world of media, and it was digital media, the early days. We've had, '05, the .com crash, the first one. I think we can say we've had one or possibly two since, at least one, and you know, there was a lot of hype that created that bubble, but it was very little you know, fundamentals behind the businesses that were being built. But then again, we had no clue. You know, people thought that internet would be some fly and it would sort of disappear. It was just, you know, but I think today we can say that it's changed. You know, it's the fourth industrial revolution, right? And so it, you know, when we ventured to Hong Kong, it was me and two buddies that, you know, we lived in Stockholm, Sweden. We thought that I was at this banking job and they were at other, you know, other sort of sales related jobs that was, you know, relatively, you know, we're paying okay and you know, we're trying to, you know, go to the clubs on the weekends, and it was the same sort of life was very routine. Robotic. Yeah, it was extremely robotic, and you know, Stockholm is a small place, right? And you know, everybody knows everybody, and you sort of feel that you want to venture somewhere else. And but there was one thing that was quite unique to Stockholm, and that was that we had three sort of relatively high-end lifestyle magazines that were online driven, and it was sort of with a community, so you could congregate with people online and you could talk about passions in life, right? And then they had this very brilliant idea, which was they would go and take images of regular folk that went to the fancy nightclubs. And some of the clubs weren't that fancy, but you know, let's say that you know, red carpet images of normal people, right? And then they would have like these little cards that they would give, right? So you knew where to go, what URL to go to kind of view these images. So on Mondays and Tuesdays, we would always go in and look at these different websites, and then you would sort of go over to the magazine side and read articles and interviews with again. So they were kind of, you know, in a very romantic way, making normal people glamorous. And we thought that's a very interesting model, right? And again, if that works in tiny Sweden, is it because Swedes are really odd people, or is this a concept that could travel, right? So we looked at that, and then we said, you know, where is their opportunity? And it was like, okay, Asia is really interesting. Hong Kong is interesting, you know, the London or the New York of Asia. Which I think it was at the time. I think Singapore certainly has taken over a lot of that aura that Hong Kong once had, for reasons I won't go into. But so we then kind of took that concept to Hong Kong. It was called Lifestyle Hong Kong. We, over the following decade, this is sort of in 2006, right, after that crash, and we then built that over a decade to the leading sort of digital media business across APAC in that particular niche, which was digital luxury and lifestyle publishing. And so, you know, in that sort of journey, I learned to communicate with yuppies or early adopters, which today we call millennials, right? So because, you know, that word wasn't yet minted. And there was a high concentration of them in Hong Kong, right? There was a high concentration in Singapore. And the idea was, let's build this audience that goes to this website, and then let's sell different ad solutions, right? Based on the eyeballs that we have. And you know, we were the first with all these crazy pop-up banners and all this annoying stuff that no one today would ever want to, you know, have, right? Or see. Or get bombarded with. But I think we did a lot of cool things where we had a champagne brand where the bottle would come up on the page and spin around, and then all of a sudden it was bubbles coming up all over the screen. And we call that an intro banner, right? An introduction banner. Yeah. And you know, those eventually got kind of, you know, there were all these ad blockers and other things that kind of came into play. But we were so early with a lot of these solutions that we were really a pioneer in digital publishing and ad solutions, and being very creative and creating, you know, ads that the media agencies had never seen before, right? They're like, we don't even have the tools to host that on the client's page, you know. So So that was how that started. I then moved to Singapore in '08 to do the same thing. It was basically a copy and paste of what we did in Hong Kong, but in Singapore, building the audience, doing a lot of events, being at the right places, being seen at the right places where the people were, and kind of build that audience. Then from there we went to Thailand and Bangkok and kind of built out that edition, and then from there to KL and Malaysia and built out that
But
edition.
you sold the business before moving to Singapore, or was it after you moved to Singapore?
No. We sold the business in 2016, December the 7th.
Wow.
to Hubert Berta Media, and so we built it for a decade, right? And a bit more than that. So we were 11 plus years in. And that was a roller coaster. It was really hard because we built that on with $1 million US.
Oh wow, yeah.
That was all the funding that we sort of received or
interesting, yeah,
raised in that journey, and over a 10-year period, right? So if you break it down as like $100K a year, right? So that was really a bootstrap model. Where we had to be very creative with salaries and how we paid commission and all of these things, right? We had to be very careful of cash flow, and media is a tough business to be in because you got to pay your bills in 30 days, but you never get paid in time by anybody. I mean, the media agencies, they would take your money, they might have been paid by their customer, which is our customer as well. Then they sit as a layer, right, to wait and do this transparent report. So let's say, brand A goes to the agency, gives them $3 million US. They then run a campaign across digital, print, TV, radio, and then they're going to end up with some campaign report 6 months later, right? Even though I finished my job as a digital publisher, which was the first month of that 6-month period, I will maybe get paid month 7 or 8, right? And so you have these really bad cash flow cycles that you have to manage. But that was a good experience, interesting experience. I guess some takeaways from that was towards the end, I was meant to stay 12 months with Hubert Berta Media, which is a German tech and media conglomerate. And then the 12 months kind of ended up being 46 months.
Wow.
And so the tail of the deal that we had done with them got changed 2 times. One of my co-founders left 6 months in, which then put me and the other co-founder in a very good position of to kind of renegotiate, because they got very nervous. They're like, if everybody leaves, we bought this thing that we can't run, and there's been no knowledge transfer. It's been a couple of months of knowledge transfer, right? But I guess the key takeaway towards the end was it was very hard to compete with the Googles and the Metas and the TikToks and all the platform players that produce no content, but they got all the users, and all the users are giving away their data for free. They've signed that away. And so we couldn't have that precision in how we were, selling ad solutions. And obviously the world had changed from us being pioneers to a lot of the things were standard. And so I said to myself, I probably need to leave media, because these guys are eating, at the time they were eating 90% of the budget pie. And there was 10% left for all the YouTubers and all the Instagrammers and all the publishers and all the TV. So the platform players, but at that inflection point that they had, probably in 2019, and many of them are still growing, but all of a sudden all the luxury brands, which was our bread and butter, they were going to social. Before that, they were like, it's not brand safe, we can't go there because we don't know in what context the ads are going to be shown. And
what do you mean by 80% of the budget's going to
90% of the time? So 90% of the budget growth that was coming each year, they were being diverted to a couple of the large social media platforms. Okay. Because all of a sudden everybody wanted to invest their money there, and that meant that they would tend to take money primarily from other digital publishers, and it was shifted
Makes sense,
over,
yeah.
right? And you know, and a lot of it went from old TV as well, right? So cable and whatnot. And I think what I learned in that journey was that I need to be able to harness data in a different way. I need to get my hands on data. I need to harness that data in a non-evil yet beneficial way for the business that I'm building. And so that was sort of how I then pivoted into, you know, I have to leave being an intrapreneur. I got to become an entrepreneur again. I have to, you know, go into a new kind of sector, but with the learnings and takeaways. I understand millennials, Gen Z, because that was who I was communicating with primarily. So what else is on the uprise for this particular community? And I think, you know, pets were certainly, you know, something that we started seeing trends early on, that a lot of millennials and in particular Gen Zs do not want to have human kids. They prefer to have fur babies. And I was, you know, and as somebody who has both, I have a human boy and I have
a furry boy,
a furry boy, which is my Maltese. That's 10 years. But I had my Maltese before my human boy. He's 4. And so I can relate to, you know, I am a millennial, but I'm like the first batch, the second batch. I think the first is if you're born 1980. Sorry, 81. I'm born 82.
Oh, it's 81. Okay.
And I believe so. If you go by whatever definition is out there, but the broader one. And so you know, get into a new sector, become an entrepreneur again, look at how can I get my hands on data to drive the business model. And I guess the combination of entrepreneur, data, and pet sector happened in that I was a pet owner. I could see that the industry was extremely analog and it needed digital transformation. This is what I did for Berta. This is what I did for publishing towards millennials. So it was in a way a rinse and repeat. It's kind of like, okay, trying to transform a very analog industry to go more digital, right? And speaking to the same audience more or less, right? And so that was the dawn of MyPetGo in that. But you know, we pivoted MyPetGo multiple times as well. So it's not like, you know, we had the greatest idea to begin with. It was kind of like, can we create a platform? Because the platform players, of course, were very much winning back then. And could we create a platform where all the pet stores can be consolidated into one place, one app? And can that be fully data driven? And so, yeah. I'm going on
That's
a
good.
ramble,
No,
you gotta, you know.
Now we're at MyPetGo, and so MyPetGo in essence is a wearable device for dogs, like a little collar, for longevity and health and tracking as well. I suppose GPS tracking.
So we do everything but not GPS tracking, right?
Okay.
And I guess, as I said, we've pivoted a bit with this venture. So initially we said, let's do health, wellness, let's do health and GPS tracking. And so we built, you know, our pilot batch for that, which was, you know, 7,000 monitors. Right. And so we have, you know, full global GPS tracking capability. Now, the issue with GPS is that it drains your battery very quickly.
True.
The second issue is because it's constantly pinging satellite, right? When you're out walking and there are ways around it, right? You kind of leverage Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to the degree that it's possible, and you can, right? And so that's the first one, right? So draining battery. The second one is scalability, right? It's very hard because on a production manufacturing stage, you need to insert the right kind of SIM card. So the world looks different. Our mobile phones have different types of SIM cards to what you would put in wearables, okay? So we have eSIMs and then we have physical SIM cards. Now, when you do these type of wearables that roam differently than your mobile phone, and bear in mind there is a limit to what you can charge an end consumer for a product like a pet wearable. Like there's a reason why this works with your phone and your Wi-Fi, but it doesn't work otherwise, right? But then it has a memory. So the memory, if you don't have internet connection, the memory will store your sleep patterns if you turn off your phone or your step count or your exercise, etc., etc. So we do the same thing with MyPetGo, but we are very Whoopish or Oura-like in that we look at health markers. For us, that is HRV, pulse rate, respiration rate, and temperature, right? Which are the 4 core vitals for a dog, right? We don't do cats yet. It's something that will come later on. So it's a dog-only proposition. We built in a longevity program where we give the pet owner daily chores, across, mobility and activity, nutrition and hygiene, and last but not least, we look at preventative care, right, and health screenings. And if you do these 3 things in a timely manner, some of them you do daily, some of them you do monthly, some of them you do biannually, some of them you do annually, right? But if you do that, you will by default have a healthier dog, and you should be able to, extend life by sort of having a healthier pet. But I will also say that the most important thing for us is not extending life. Of course it is, but it's the quality of the life as that pet is alive, right? And it's making sure that it's a joyous life. It's a life that is pain free. I think what we don't realize is
not lifespan.
Health span, health span, correct. I think what we don't know with pets is that they have a lot of pain, but they can't communicate the pain to us because they don't talk, right? So we want that data to kind of help translate.
How do you translate pain? And even in for humans, I wouldn't even imagine, my vitals look okay, but I'm in pain. How do you correlate that then?
So you got to triage different data points, right? So for instance, inside of the monitor, we got different sensors, right? So we're a non-intrusive monitor, just like the Whoop, but we sit around the neck. The monitor can be anywhere on the back, the front. It tends to end up here because of gravity. But we use these sensors, and we use something called ballistocardiography, or BCG in short. Okay. This would be PPG, so it emits green light under your skin. You look at it, you see the light there, right? We can't do that with a furry animal because the fur is there, and so we're using BCG, which is the only scientific approach we believe is sort of what can be done. Now, I'm sure this could be applied in the future, and there will be a way to kind of get the green lights through that skin and calibrate for it. But at the moment, that's very tricky. So we use BCG, and what that is we're looking at how the blood mass is shifting inside of the body, right? Of the dog. And then we pull out X, Y, and Z values, and we put these into AI models, and then the AI models feed out HRV, respiration rate, pulse rate, and temperature is using a temperature gauge that is sitting on the back of the monitor against the fur, but again calibrated because we know it's fur, we know what type of breed it is, we know the age, the gender, etc., etc. All that info we get from the manual input from the caretaker as they set up the application. But it's essentially, going back to your question on pain, it's using sensors that are looking at how is the pet moving and why is it not laying on this side that it normally lays on, etc., etc. So you look at, you got to triage the data points to kind of look at abnormalities in that data to understand, what's the reason. We're doing some really cool things with image recognition, neural image recognition, which is also AI based. We're essentially using machine learning models and comparing images to a big database of images where we can,
that is cool,
based on stool You can take a picture of the stool.
Right.
You know, if you're a responsible pet owner, you'll probably pick up stool twice a day. So you are interacting with stool anyways. And for those that don't understand what stool means, it's basically the poop. And so you snap a picture of it. And this is a new thing that we've sort of partnered with a company that had this IP. And I think that's the way forward. We're sort of thinking bigger, like, do we have to build everything ourselves, or are there synergistic companies that we can either acquire or partner with and kind of build into what we're doing? But this particular company, they have that technology where you take a picture of the stool and it will tell you whether there is parasites in it or blood in the stool, or if it's, potential things creeping up with liver or kidney issues. Red poisons, etc., etc. So
just from a photo?
With that, we're also doing something.
That's crazy.
Yes, photo. Yes. So we're doing the same for skin irritation, eye, and mouth, oral disease, and so we think the holy trinity of triaging data points to understand pain, understand toothache, understand, a mild skin disease from a severe skin disease. I think a severe skin disease you might see with your eyes, but if you're not aware, you're not aware. If you don't know, you don't know. So I think, if you can triage image recognition where it's relevant with, sensor data, right, and behavior traits, which we can pick up through the monitor, with manual input, which is information from the caretaker, things that we couldn't pick up with the image or with the sensor, which is a questionnaire or a self-assessment kind of tool, and a chat boot. If you combine those, you have the holy trinity of triaging. And I think a lot of the possible issues with your pet could be, we could do that consultation from the comfort of your home or wherever you are, with kind of holding your hand throughout that journey. Whether you actually have to go to the vet in person, that should be the last resort, right? So we're trying to kind of make that whole journey more efficient and simplify it. But it's all sort of AI driven. It's all driven by new tech, and we obviously believe it's much
That would
needed.
save me so much time and money. You won't believe how many trips I've made to the vet's office just because my dog's going nuts, scratching himself.
And don't forget peace of mind. Yeah. Peace of mind also for you.
Peace of mind,
and comfort for your pet, right? I think the faster you can get to a solution, the better it is. And look, you can look at the environmental efficiency there. It's like you don't have to get a cab or a car or whatever to go to the vet, of course, right? Yeah. So so it's more carbon neutral. I think the fact that we're so incredibly low on vets globally, right? And this is more true for certain countries than others, but I think broadly speaking, there is a complete mismatch in terms of supply and demand. Right? So there is an undersupply of vets. It takes us long to become a vet. I know your sister is becoming a vet, but it takes us long to become a vet as a doctor, more or less. And because you are a doctor, but you're a doctor in veterinary medicine. And so we need a lot more vets. But I think that's part of the solution. I think the other part of the solution is we need digital tools that can help to streamline the vet's work, and that pets that need to see them in person are the ones that are coming into the clinic or to the hospital, not pet owners that are coming down with something that could have been fixed or sorted through another digital kind of veterinary AI solution, or this holy trinity of triaging that we're sort of building. And look, we don't think we're the only answer to this problem. We think we're one of the solutions, and there's going to need to be many others. And I think if we as the pet tech companies can come together and work together, and learn from each other and share with each other, I think there'll be it will be better.
I'm really curious about that, because is this a market, like, now putting on the kind of VC hat here, is this a market that that is sort of like a Whoop, where winner takes all. There's no, I cannot think of a second alternative to Whoop. Maybe Aura, but not exactly. Like they tackle different parts of the market. Or is this like a oligopoly situation where you have multiple choices, and it's how do you think about that?
So look, my view is that the market is large enough. There is about a billion companion dogs and cats globally, right? And so, some people might argue that is less, others might argue that is more. But I say companion as in they live with humans. If we take away the strays, there is obviously a lot more. So there's a large market. And I think when we look at pet care, we're probably 10 years behind human health care, right? And so, we're probably in terms of pet wearables, 5-10 years behind human wearables, right? We're trying to be like a Whoop, and we think Will and the guys at Whoop have done an amazing job with their journey and what they've achieved. But there is a lot of mystique around that. Nobody knows how many monitors are out there. It's a private company. It's worth, many billions of dollars. They've raised a lot of money, have a lot of staff, but nobody really knows. They're not open with revenues or churn rate or any of it, right? I hear that people that buy a Whoop, they tend to stay with their Whoop for a long time, but what's the reality? I don't know. I think Whoop and Oura are both very much focused on sleep, strain, rest, these sort of markers that I think is very important for people that exercise and work hard. People that work hard, play hard, but also somewhere in between exercise. And so they found their category there. And then there is the corporate angle. Does the corporates take care of their staff? Do they provide a Whoop? And but the journey with Whoop started extremely different. It was something for sports teams where the coach would look at sleep and rest and say, "Hey, you've been drinking again." It was priced very high. And then they went down to this freemium model where you get it for free if you commit to, it was 6 months back in the days. Now obviously with demand they've changed that, right? So to come back to your question, I have an Apple Ultra watch, which was my first ever Apple watch, but I'm an Apple guy. Everything else I use is Apple. And so it took me a long time to get my head around, do I need that? And the honest answer, probably not. They're not all about health. They do a lot of things, the Apple watches. You don't get your emails here, right? You don't know the time really, right? There's no screen. So it's very different. But Apple owns about 35% of the smart wearable market, right? And so Apple is the largest player. And, they make, I think their revenue is about $10 billion in terms of wearables.
Really? Wow.
And so it's a lot of money, right? So nobody is close, right? Samsung Galaxy is probably second up there. Fitbit, which is what we tend to kind of talk about, which was let's say the original gangster in terms of wearables. And we've certainly been called the Fitbit of the world of pet. But look, so to come back to your question, there's probably a couple of thousand human wearables. There's probably 100 plus pet wearables. So there's a lot of pet wearables out there. Most of them are focused on GPS tracking. And that is their core offering. Then they might do a bit of wellness. They might do, some other things. When we decided to take out GPS and go full health longevity, that was deliberate in that we believe that down the road there will be a winner who is the Oura of the pet health industry, and we want to be sort of that frontier tech offering. And so we've said, let's just double down on this and really infuse AI in the right areas and work with DVMs and cardiologists and people that can make us own HRV as a value, because HRV is something that is commonly used in the human sense, but not so much in the pet sense. And so we need to make sense of HRV as a health marker, and how does that best get sort of applied in veterinary medicine. And so I think the market is vast and broad, and it's going to grow a lot. And I think it's if we had a couple of direct competitors doing what we're doing, I think honestly the market would grow, because we all push together and we make it grow. Today I think it's very much driven by GPS tracking still, which is, again, many times when you might need that function, there is no battery left in it, and so it becomes obsolete in that what it does. I think in other times it drains your battery a lot, so you've got to charge it a lot. I'm not against GPS tracking. I think it's a very good thing to have if you live on the countryside. Yeah. If you live in a city where you got to walk your dog,
not a big deal,
because that's the law. It's not going to be a function that you're going to use a lot.
Exactly. That's what I thought. So, I'm so curious. How do you? There are a couple of competitors in market, right? Like in the US, Whistle is pretty big. I think there's one in. I'm not sure where the base, but Pet Pace is one I came across. If you've probably heard of them.
Well, look, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know of all of them. I should say all of the 100.
How do you? Yes. Okay, so without focusing on what they do, right? How do you? What's a commercial model? How do you compete in that arena and win? What's your advantage there?
Yes. So I think, the majority of these other wearables, they're direct to consumer focused. We're a business to business focused.
Interesting.
They are GPS focused as the core. Yep. We are a data business. We're not a wearable. The wearable is a means to extract the data points that we need in order to do what we do.
Interesting. Okay.
Many of these companies are wearable businesses. However, everybody has a SaaS fee.
Yeah.
So, not everybody, but more or less, right? There are some that don't. So I think, these companies acquire customers the old traditional way by performance marketing, which I believe is the customer acquisition cost is probably $100 to $200 US.
Wouldn't be surprised. Wow.
I think the churn rate is quite high. Yeah. I think the average churn rate is probably quite high. So that model becomes extremely challenging in that you're not providing enough value. And I think if you're a city, you're a suburban sort of or you're a city person who has a dog. You buy that GPS tracker, you realize after testing it a couple of times that it becomes a novelty. You got to charge it a lot, and you got to leash your dog, so it didn't really do that much for you. I think that's why we see that big churn. It's just not, the other issue with GPS, I should say, which I didn't mention earlier, is it doesn't work very well anywhere in the world. There are a lot of black spots.
Right.
And so when you really want it to work, it may not work. And there are some players out there that are, and again, I'm not going to mention names, that have done a tremendous job. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm not bashing GPS as a functionality. I think it's subjective to what degree it's something that you want to have. We've taken the stance that we think there are other things that are very important and will be crucially more important over time, and we're being very early in that space. And that's what we decided to hone in on. But our model is we go and partner with pet insurance companies, with pet longevity companies, with other pet tech companies, with televet companies, with anybody who wants our tech enablement, right? So we can white label our app completely. The monitor looks the same, but it's the app in the name of the partner. The data goes to the partner. They have a big dashboard. They can look at all the data, look at different trends. If you're a pet insurance company, you can, in a better way, figure out dynamic pricing. You can look at certain health trends. You You can obviously reduce your claims, which is usually the core metric that they're looking at, but also increase retention, because you have daily engagement, right? All of a sudden, you're an insurance business that goes from, if it's a healthy pet, you might communicate once a year. Here's your renewal, Maybe there's a claim one time a year. Okay, so you have 2 interactions with that customer. Now you have this daily interaction where you are providing pet chores, and it feels like as an insurer you really care about the owner and the pet. Yeah. And that's all our enablement. That's our longevity program. It's our hardware that reports that data in a transparent way back to the insurance company. And if you do these things, maybe you can have a reduction in your premium. And this is again sort of taken from the world of human health insurance with Vitality that you might have come across. So we've done a clone on that for dogs.
Right, and ultimately that means your customers love you, your insurers also love you because you're effectively managing their risk a lot better, and you're collecting a shit ton of data at the same time. And you mentioned you're a data company first, and wearables. Yes. Company second. What does that mean?
We're not a wearable company at all.
Interesting.
It's just a means to extrapolate the data points that we need. In this case, it's X, Y, and Z values that feeds into our AI models in order to feed out HRV and respiration rate and these other values. And behavior traits, we don't just look at 4 health markers. We look at all everything that goes with behavior traits, the neural image stuff, which is very new for us with this partnering company, regenerative artificial intelligence, where we're building this large pet care database where we want to leverage Gen AI, where you can essentially ask any question around pet care and we should be able to crawl our own exclusive database to fish out the most appropriate answer.
Interesting.
And so I think that's the bigger picture, the Gen AI picture, right? So our model is we have no CAC because we're partnering with these companies, right? We are B2B. We think that working with companies that have a big addressable use base is a more clever way of sourcing the right type of pet owners. Because, you can go there and do performance marketing and you can find a lot of pet owners that will buy it, but you'll probably end up with a high churn, and you realize that your business model is flawed in that, today VCs look at very different things. They don't look at hyper growth the way they used to. And so with that, there needs to be a sustainable model that you need to prove a lot faster versus before it was like at any expense, grow. Yeah. And, and so I think that's good that the world has changed in that way. But, our sort of idea with being a data company is that we're data driven and we help people to become more data driven in how they nurture and take care of their pets. And that's right, we need to have 2 levers in that equation. The first one is our partnering company, and then it's their customers, right? And so we need to please both the partnering company, be that pet insurance, and then their customers. Right? And sometimes we are very disguised in the equation, right? It looks like we're just the one providing the hardware, but we're actually the one doing the app, the backend data, the AI, the whole thing. So the whole enablement. So we can essentially provide a whole pet care ecosystem for our B2B partners.
Huge, yeah.
And some might want to have monitoring. Yeah, some might just want to have, like in LATAM market, there is a company that wants to run a clinical trial with us where they are having
interesting
they're pushing something in the longevity space, but they want to prove out through data that this thing is actually improving life, that pets get more active and so this is aging pets.
That's
so I think,
fascinating.
Because we're so broad, we have built this Lego like building blocks that we can then piece together depending on the wants and the needs of our B2B partners. And that kind of sets us apart, because if you look at all the other wearables, they are direct to consumer, GPS first, CAC model, performance marketing model, they don't do all the other additional stuff that
Right,
we do,
makes
right?
sense.
They might do a little bit of wellness and so on.
Okay.
So we've said, but boy, do I wish we did what they do sometimes
sexy.
and as good as they do it, because it's one customer by one customer.
Yeah.
But there are some guys. I was in Berlin recently. I met one of the guys there. They have 1 million paying customers. But they do one by one. But
Wow.
he's been doing that since whatever it is, 2013, and is one of the leaders, and has been profitable throughout the journey. So he claims.
Yeah.
And so there are certainly companies that can prove that model. But I think if it's correct, I've heard from others that is not the real the truth. But anyways, if it's correct, well done and incredible,
a million.
But we think our model is more like, I think we can get to 1 million faster, because I can go to one insurance company, and if they make it a standard that every plan, existing and new, comes with a wearable and this program, then that, and they have 1 million users, then I got 1 million users, right? Now we need to know that pet insurance is something that's growing at an alarming rate, right? So in the US, we're looking at a 2.5% to 3% penetration. My native country, Sweden, we're looking at 90% penetration, right? So it's the most pet insured market in the world, but it's a tiny market compared to US. But because of that penetration in Sweden, we probably have as many pets insured in Sweden and US. US is the dog population is 110, 120.
This is fascinating.
Right? So it's a very, very big market. I think, but what we're seeing is a 22% organic growth in the US market in terms of pet insurance. And if you then amplify that by a lot of marketing and other things, there is more growth to be had. You can probably grow at 40%.
Okay.
So it is, a very close ally of us in terms of who we believe we can best help. We think that pet insurance is certainly that, but
fascinating.
Dog walking apps. I mean, it could be anything. Anything where a wearable would make sense, where this data would make sense, where it can help them amplify what they're doing, where it helps them to stand out from their competition, right? With differentiation. And I think we can offer that.
How do you deal with, and I'm sure you get this question all the time, but how do you deal with potential partners wanting an exclusive deal, which it's just counter to what you want?
Yeah. So I think we try to avoid exclusivity as much as we can, but if they're large enough, or if they're sexy enough, or if they are in a market where we feel that that's the right partner for that particular geo territory. Look, we're global, right? We started out in Singapore, but and I'm now in Spain because I need to be in a time zone where I can cater to LATAM, US, North America, Europe, and Asia, and I can kind of sit in the middle. And so I think, it's a never-ending thing for us.
Now, as a data company, you're probably going to be valued as a data company. Is that how you're thinking about it in terms of a potential exit valuation? Well, in essence, how big do you think this is going to be?
Yeah, look, I think if we want to be pragmatic about how we think about the how do we best value a company, I'll compare one of the GPS guys in the pet space to the Whoop guys, right? So I think Whoop's last public valuation was 3.6 billion. Again, we don't know about how many users they have, but I would sort of guess it's less than 1 million because it's very restricted. You can't buy it everywhere. Yeah. I compare it to, let's say, the guys that have 1 million in the pet space, 1 million users. I think the valuation of the GPS tracking business is less than 10 times of the health tech company being Whoop. And I think that's because Whoop is valued as a data business, right? It's not valued on some sort of price to earnings, or because there is no earnings there, I believe. I might be wrong, but I don't think they're making money yet. And I don't think it's based on some revenue multiple. I think it's based on, look, they got this gigantic database of healthcare data. They've really pushed the envelope in terms of what you can do with, healthy sleep markers and sleep patterns and
yeah.
So it's like, what is that database worth? And it's worth what someone else is willing to pay for it, truly. But I think, what else could you do with this database down the road? And I think what we will see with companies that are in the database business and in the AI business is that there's going to be tremendous acquisitions happening where companies get acquired for the database and the IP over the revenue or profitability. And so I think traditionally with tech, we've maybe seen Meta buy up certain things for the user base. Okay, they have a big user base, but they make no money. So we're gonna pay $1 billion for it, or $2 billion for it. Right? We saw that with WhatsApp, and we saw that with Instagram. But I think we've kind of, with AI, you're sort of like, how do I get my hands on an exclusive database? Because in 5 years, 95% of all the data will be synthetic and AI based anyway. So how do you truly have a unique database that is not open source, not the World Wide Web?
Zero party proprietary.
And I think so that's gonna, So for us, it's really the Gen AI play and being that data business and building that vast exclusive pet care database and being able to offer the holy trinity of triaging, basically owning the customer journey from start to end before the step of stepping into a clinic or a hospital. And I think, the way we view that is that sky is the limit. It can be worth a lot of money to somebody down the road. And that's what we think. We think, probably a trade sales, but if not a listing as the markets recover. But, there's nothing wrong keeping the company forever and keeping it private and paying out dividends as and when we get there.
And this is fascinating. All right, I have one more question, and then the final question, and we'll wrap up. But if that's the case, if that's the conviction, what's and this is a tough question, so just heads up. What's stopping you from going out and saying, all right, my closest competitor, or the largest player in my space right now, that I don't even think of as a competitor in the GPS tracking space, is worth, say, 200 million. And the equivalent, if we were to use a comparison with Whoop, is 10x. And we could potentially be 10x more valuable than the largest company in this space. And that would be 2 billion. What's stopping you from going out and just raising a shit ton of money and doing just that? Or are you doing that exactly?
Well, I mean, my sort of inclination is maybe I should buy them and use my monitors, and then by that we are then worth a lot more because we're basically just giving free upgrades to everybody, right? So I mean, there is that sort of. Do we do that? But yes, we are raising shit tons of money. So that's definitely happening. What we will do with this money is probably a straddle between build, which is we continue to build ourselves, and we build around and on top of what we have, right? So we're acquiring this company with this new tech that we like, and we have what we have, and then we're gonna amplify what we have, right? But then we're thinking we can build other things. So we have the Gen AI play that we're building, right? The infrastructure for. And then we're sort of thinking, what else could we invest into or acquire, right? It could be undervalued IP. It could be IP that sits on a university shelf somewhere that is not being used and they're happy to get something for it. I think the way to acquire a lot of these companies is with stock and as little cash as you can, right? And so to make sure that these people get invested into what we're building, the bigger picture, and that we kind of push that together forward. And that whatever knowledge they possess can be transferred into the equation of what we're doing. So I think, our thinking is build, invest, acquire. And if we do this by ourselves or with a larger strategic, is time will tell. will we raise this money the traditional way? Probably not. I don't think this fits the VC model, so we're not going to raise it from VCs. We're going to have to raise it from family offices. We're going to have to raise it from strategics. We're going to have to raise it from maybe through unconventional debt methods, and make sure that there is a repayment semester on that. But look, that's what we're thinking, and so we're gonna be quite the aggressor, and I always like to sort of see, there are people in the pet insurance space that's been very aggressive in recent years, like GAB Holdings, which is this other German conglomerate that owns Schweppes and Dr. Pepper and Bali shoes and Coty Prestige perfumes, but they started to invest heavily into the pet sector 4 years ago, and they've been buying up a lot of pet insurance. And so I think their conviction is that pet insurance is going to grow a lot, and they're obviously looking into the crystal ball, and they're seeing something that I think a lot of other people have missed. But I think, in a similar way, we want to be the aggressor, but in longevity and AI pet sector, and kind of really push that envelope.
Richard, last question. You're a super sharp guy, and you've picked industries and things that are really, really difficult, and it looks like from what I've seen, you've found success in all of them. What's one mental model or one frame of mind that you use on a regular basis that helps you through making better decisions?
Okay, well, I mean, thank you for saying that. First off, I think, look, very subjective, but I think, maybe start off your day. I think everybody wakes up a bit anxious. That's just the way that we're wired.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying that's true to everybody, but I think a lot of people wake up with whether you've been drinking the night before or not. It's just how we are. And so for me to get going in the morning, I meditate, to get my head straight, and I think it helps to combat some of that I mean, I wouldn't call it nervousness, but feeling a bit it positions me for the day in a way, right? And whatever your meditation may be, whatever, you got to try different things. I've tried a lot of things, but for me it's just praying, right, to Jesus Christ, which is the God that I believe in. But and anyone out there might believe in a different God, or it might be mindfulness, or it might be cold plunge pool, or there is different ways to do it. If that doesn't work for you, I would say exercise. Sweat out that anxiety. That also tends to help. So I meditate, I then exercise, and then I drink coffee, right? And I try to be super healthy, and I do all this stuff, but I'm a flawed man in many regards. So I drink too much, though I know it's not good, and I've been thinking about giving it up so many times, like completely, right? And then I just bought a new wine fridge, and I'm like, okay, great, that this is working out great. But I think look, life is too short to be too anal about everything. But I think the priming for me is mainly praying and exercising, and that in combination kind of sets me on the straight path. And that's 100%.
And for folks listening or watching, the best way to get in touch with Richard, if you're a pet insurer or in the pet space, and if you're interested in collaborating, Richard, you're probably most active on LinkedIn. Is that the place to reach you, or?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. You can find me. Just look at Richard Nilsson on LinkedIn. Reach out, DM me. I usually respond. If you're not selling web services, I don't need another website or another application. I make them myself. But if you want to collaborate, you're interested, you want to know more, reach out. I'm usually I'm open-minded, and if you're a entrepreneur that's trying to build something, you want a second opinion, happy to help as well. Happy to give back whatever I can to the community.
Richard, thank you for your time. That's the pod.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for having me. All the best.
All right.